I saved a life. I saved a life with boredom. Whose? How? This is what I want not to talk to you, but rather chat with you about today. I was sitting on a table eating lunch with my family. We were eating majboos particularly, and there were 3 generations on that table. I started by asking my parents, did you guys feel bored in the past? Was life as boring as it is now? And they said, no, not really. We have things to do, we had responsibilities, we had people around, we had everything. And then I asked the younger 2 generations. An answer I got is, we're bored because we're doing the same thing again and again and again, routine. I asked the youngest, and they told me, we feel bored because we don't have anybody to chat with, or we feel bored when we don't have somebody to play with. And I've realized that the difference between the newer and the older generation is that we have technology in our life. And that technology took us away from people and more with ourselves. And that's the time we realized that boredom actually exists and we can pinpoint it, and our parents were not able. This is why when you go to say you're bored to your parents, sometimes they just don't get it, and they tell you you're lazy, you're not enough. So we cannot blame them, really. We're different. They had boredom, they did not recognize it. And the result, we got programmed that boredom is not good. So let me explain to you why boredom exists. Why do we have to go through boredom? Through a philosophy called unity of opposite, which obviously you don't need to know. So let's go to the content of this theory. Obviously now you can see my nephews and nieces, and please don't judge me, but they want to be here. One reason is because I cannot afford a professional photographer, and number 2, they told me if this is going to be on YouTube and you will be famous, then we want to be famous too. So that's the result. So point number 1 of this theory is the existence of a thing requires the existence of an opposite, and the perception of a thing requires the perception of an opposite. To make it clearer, in order to have light, we have dark. And because one day we saw what light is, we understand what darkness is. Same goes with up and down. We have up because we have down, and down wouldn't exist if we don't have up. Cold, hot, rich, poor, boredom and interest as well. Imagine those opposites as a team, and those teams are playing the tug-of-war game. Again, you can see my nephews fighting for my youngest nephew. If we imagine those opposites as 2 teams trying to winning a title or a trophy, and these 2 opposites were exactly equal, the result will be stasis. They will be exactly balanced, no movement, absolutely, and nobody will win. And this is what I want you to imagine with boredom and interest. Boredom is a team and interest is another team, and they're fighting. Only when one of them moves and become bigger or the other one becomes smaller, the systems moves and one will win. That fighting between boredom and interest creates movements towards the better. And how? Because one day we have experienced what boredom feels like, that unpleasant sensation. And the other day we feel like we enjoy our time, it's fun, it's great. When we feel interested, we always want to stay interested. And when we feel bored, we always want to stay away from it and go towards interest. This fight between the opposites, interest and boredom, will create momentum. Because one day you felt you're interested, and the other day you felt that you're bored, and you taste the feelings of both. You know how it feels to feel bored, and you know how it feels to feel interested. So you will always work towards being interested. Whenever you feel interested, you will hang on into it, and you don't want to be back to that unpleasant state of boredom. I made these two equations. How can boredom equals procrastination, but at the same time boredom equals motivation? And it happens based on your behavior. If you behaved positively towards boredom, you will get motivation. However, if you behaved negatively towards boredom, you will get procrastination. And what I mean by behaving negatively is that, for example, when you're bored, you go through YouTube, you look at random things, and you might end up actually watching how to make Japanese bread in Japanese. You might end up watching a guy eating a McDonald's meal in 10 seconds. You name it. So how can you behave positively towards boredom? According to Dr. Erin Westgate, a psychologist from the University of Florida, she suggested that there are two main factors that play equal roles in boring us. The first is having no meaning, and the second is a break in attention, aka distractions. If the activity you're trying to complete means absolutely nothing for you, then the way you act with it is simply leave it. This is like you're invited to a movie that you hate, but all of your friends are going. You just simply shouldn't go. You shouldn't waste your time. If the activity you're trying to complete is something important, is something that you want, you should try different techniques. One of them is change the way you're doing it. For example, you're a student bored of reading books. Maybe it's time to start watching videos about the topic. Sometimes the issue is about the environment. You used to enjoy it, but the environment got too routine to you, got too boring for you. Maybe the new manager is not treating you well. At this time, you need to change the environment. Sometimes we feel bored because the project or what we have to do is too big. At that time, you should actually break it into more smaller pieces and try to do something every day. A big one that people sometimes miss is that they get bored because they are tired. Some people just don't get enough sleep. And finally, remove any distractions around you. If you have a big project, maybe go to a hotel, spend some time alone. And finally, if the activity you're trying to complete means nothing, but it's something that you must do, you just simply do it without overthinking it. So we come to realize, okay, that's it. Boredom is good, or boredom is bad. So let's talk psychology. It depends, actually. It depends on the context. According to Dr. Tilburg, essentially, being bored, that experience of boredom, make us realize that there are more valuable things to us. And that's very important for us to change behavior and break the monotony. Break the monotony means that you're not like everybody else. You're not a copy-paste. You are somebody who's original. You're somebody who's very individual. But when boredom hits you, the time you have a dull side activity, perhaps boredom is not very helpful. What I'm trying to say today is that boredom is more than productivity issue. Boredom is much deeper. It's about life, it's about desires, It's about your journey to look for what represents you. So what is it about? During this technological era, the first thing we think about when we feel bored is how can we get rid of it as fast as possible. So we go and watch a movie, turn on a song, or play a video game, and we engage in it. And we feel happy and not bored anymore. But what happens at the moment everything is done? The movie stops, the song stops. You're back. You're back not even to 0.0, but even worse. You're back with more boredom that is not going with the same amount of stimuli. Continuing to look for different, more powerful stimuli will eventually backfires, because it's like addiction. With time, you will develop something called tolerance, and the distractions you used to use are not going to work anymore. On the contrary, instead of looking for different stimuli, we should embrace the idea of lack of stimuli, because it's only when we're alone and quiet we can connect with our feelings and understand our needs. And that's the best weapon you can arm yourself with to go out there and connect with the world. So think about it like a wake-up call. Essentially, that unpleasant experience of boredom make us realize that there are more important matters to us, and push us to engage with activities that are more meaningful for us. And that, for me, doesn't sound like boredom. It sounds like hope. We always tell ourselves, I wish I get a sign, I wish I knew this before. Well, here you go. Boredom is the sign that your unconscious used to tell you, listen, Tahera, you, there's something wrong. Please go and fix it. So when boredom hits you, what I want you to do is take a deep breath and tell yourself with the voice of Lucifer Morningstar, what do you truly desire? As long as your desires go along your principles, your beliefs, your morals, you should listen to them. You should go and discover and experience them, categorize them, understand them, and that will make you just a tiny bit closer to your purpose. The voice of boredom will never shut up. However, it will stay quiet. I'll tell you the ugly truth that nobody will. You can never get rid of boredom. It's impossible to get rid of boredom. However, you definitely can adapt to it, live with it, and feel comfortable. Before this gets too boring, back to the question I've asked, who I saved. Give it a guess. Me. I saved me. Shukran. Thank you.